Let's continue talking about the buying decision process. So in the previous module, we talked about information search and problem recognition. So what do people want and need, and what kind of information do they look for? Now, what we're going to talk about now is how do people make sense and use that information. Now, this is tied to the idea of perception. So what does perception mean? Perception is a process by which consumers select, organize, and interpret information inputs to create a meaningful picture of the world. So what it means in more visual terms, now, in order to make sense of information, I first need to notice that information and must be able to enter it into my head, into my processing unit. Now, perception in turn is driven by two factors. So one of them being exposure. So what that means, in order to notice and use and process information, well, first I need to be exposed to it. So I need to have some kind of opportunity and chance to notice and process that information. Now, the idea of exposure is different from the idea of attention, meaning, now, am I paying attention to all the information that I'm provided with? Now, this may be related to some kind of characteristics of the information, so whether it's loud or vivid, can be noticed easily. Now, but it's also tied to individual factors, right? So to your needs, or what kinds of needs you are, and what kind you have, and what kinds of information you notice. And I think the entire idea of perception is fascinating because you can show again and again that perception, so what kind of information you notice in the first place, what is it that you see, is not an entirely objective experience now, but this can be heavily biased by your psyche or your brain, right? Now, let's talk about perceptual biases, for instance. Now, as an example here, now I brought along a couple of pictures. Now, if you would look at these two lines in the middle, so which of these two lines is longer, do you think? Or let's look at these circles here. Which of the circles is bigger? The top one surrounded by smaller circles, or the other circles surrounded by the larger circles? Which one is bigger? Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is because, this is a trick, right? Now, obviously, the two lines as the two circles are all identical. Now, the only thing that changes is the context, right? Now, we know that, and I've seen these pictures many, many times, but I can't get my head around it, right? I always think in the first split second that the top line is longer than the bottom line, and that the top circle is larger than the bottom circle. And why? Because the context in which these two pieces of information are presented, well, the context changes. And if the context changes, now it may change my perception of the line or circle. So it might mean, I may mean well, I want to perceive or look at information objectively, but I can't because the context, is biasing me. Now, I'm going to show you a different task, or a different trick, so to speak. Now, what I'm going to show you on the next slides are words, right? Now, these words will be written in different colors, different fonts, right? So the fonts will be written in different color. Now, what I want you to do quickly, you can write it down on a piece of paper, just say it out loud, is to say or tell as fast as possible the color in which the word is written, right? So in a more abstract manner, what is the color of the picture that you see, right? So you understood that. That's what they call the Stroop task. Okay, so let's go on. Go on. What is the color of these three words? Second row. What are the colors of these three words? Third row, again, what are the colors of these three words? Okay, now you should be finished by now. Now, if you are like me, or if you're like most other people out there in the world, now the first two rows should have been very difficult, right, or quite difficult. And why? Now again, because I'm tricking you, right? Because there's two pieces of information, the word that you read and the color in which the word is written, And the first two rows, well, these two pieces of information are at odds. They contradict each other, right? Now, you see this word here, green. Now, it's written in a red font, and I ask you, what is the color of the word? And people will always say green, right? Because this is what they read. They know they shouldn't do it. They know they should ignore the written piece of information, but they just can't, right? Now, the same in this line, red, orange, pink. Now, all of a sudden, the third line is a lot easier because all of a sudden, now these two pieces of information are the same. Now, you read yellow, and the word is also written in a yellow font. Now, this makes it easier to identify the right color, right? So again, these are good examples of showing now you may mean well. Now, you're really motivated to identify the color of the word as quickly as possible now, but your mind fails you. Right? So your mind plays tricks on you. You're unable to work around the contradiction between the word and the color, the visual and the verbal information. Now, the lines and the words here, the Stroop task, now these are examples of what they call perceptual biases, right? So I mean, you want to perceive in an objective manner, you want to process information in an objective manner, but you find out that you can't, right? Now, another idea would be, now maybe people, they just don't want to perceive the world in an objective manner. Maybe, their mind is playing tricks on them, but this is because they wanted to play tricks on them. Now, one very popular theory in this respect is something they call the theory of cognitive dissonance, right? So a very popular theory that was developed by Leonard Festinger in the 1950s, but still very, very relevant to this day. Now, what does the theory say? Now, the theory says that on a very basic level, people have a need for order and consistency in their lives, right? So people like to feel that everything that's going on in their heads, all their thoughts and opinions and attitudes, what they think about the world, now that there's some kind of balance between these elements, right? Or you can flip that question, that statement around and say, well, a cognitive imbalance, right? What they call a dissonance. Now, this is perceived as very unpleasant. Now, and these feelings of unpleasantness are going to be stronger, the stronger the dissonance, right? Now, I can illustrate that through an example very easily. Now, for example, imagine that you like sushi. You really like tuna sushi on the one hand, so that's one cognitive element. And another cognitive element could be, well, you care for the environment, right? Now, if you think about these two cognitive elements carefully, you will see, well, this creates kind of a conundrum, kind of an imbalance or dissonance, well, because these two pieces don't go very well together. Well, because the key component of sushi often is tuna, and now tuna is very, very yummy. Lots of people think it's yummy. Well, this is one of the reasons why there's hardly any tuna left on the world, right? Now, if you say, well, I care about the environment, now the fact that you're eating tuna, well, that should be kind of unpleasant, right? So these two elements, I like sushi and I like the environment, well, they just don't go together. Now, what the theory would predict that in this case, now you will be very creative at solving that dissonance because it's unpleasant, and you want to feel at peace again, and you will start thinking or looking for ways to dissolve that dissonance. Now, for example, you could say, well, yes, well, I like tuna and I eat tuna, and I know it's not bad. I know it's bad, it's not good for the world, but guess what? I hardly drive a car. I haven't taken the plane in 2 years. Well, see, I'm doing a lot for the environment, and because of that, well, I'm allowed a little leeway on me eating tuna. Now, that's a very interesting thought process. Now, but these two things don't have anything to do with each other. Now, the fact that you don't have a car or don't use a plane very often is not related at all to the fact that tunas are on the verge of extinction, right? But the theory says, well, engaging in this kind of creative thinking, well, this will allow you to achieve some kind of cognitive balance, and people are motivated to do that, right? Now, and what's the lesson here? Now, the lesson here is that our perception is not really objective. What it means is that information that confirms what we believe, or kind of reflects what we want to believe, is noticed and processed more easily. Now, one area of application in a marketing context is what they call post-purchase dissonance, right? Now, so what they mean here is, so if you buy a certain product, that doesn't only imply that you choose one option, right? Now you also make a decision against all of the other options. Right? So you choose an iPhone, now it means you didn't choose Samsung, Huawei, or whatever, all the other brands, right? Now, and they say, well, this may cause post-purchase dissonance. Now you go out and buy an iPhone, or it's a digital camera in this respect, right, in this example. You go out and buy a digital camera, you're happy, and all of a sudden you start thinking, well, have I made the right choice, right? Or should I have taken a different camera? Now, this is again a state of a cognitive imbalance. Now, the theory says, or looks at, now, how will people go about solving that imbalance? So how can they feel at peace again? And they will identify a lot of different strategies. And I think, we talk about that, you will recognize that we do this all the time, probably without even noticing explicitly. Now, they say, well, okay, so assume you go out and buy a digital camera. You're not really sure whether you made the right choice after all, and say, well, one thing that you can do is search for consonant for confirming information afterwards. Right now, you go online, you look for your camera, and you see lots of positive user reviews, or you will read a report that says, well, this camera is the best on the marketplace. Right? That's good. Right? It confirms your belief. Now, another thing you can do is, now instead of searching for confirming consonant information, you just go about avoiding dissonant information, right? Saying, well, I'm not really sure if I made the right choice, and I don't really want to know. And one thing that I do now is I don't read reviews. I don't read consumer reports and say, well, I don't care about consumer reports. I have a camera now, I like it, so why bother? So kind of blindfolding yourself. A different strategy would be what they call modified interpretation, right? Now, assuming you buy the camera, you read a report, consumer report, saying, well, maybe your camera is not the best that you could have gotten. So one thing that you could do, right, now your camera is up here, right, and the report is down here, well, you just ignore or reinterpret the report, saying, well, maybe consumer reports doesn't have a clue, right? Another possibility, what they call attitude change, right? Now again, here's your camera up here in your cognitive schema, right? Now, the consumer reports is here. Now what you can do to achieve a balance again is you change your attitudes, meaning you bring down your attitude on a level with what the report implies, right? Saying, well, that's a bad brand, everybody knows that, and I should have known that, right? And the last possibility is to take action, right? So you solve the inconsistency by setting everything back to zero, saying, well, I'm going to return the camera or even buy a new one, right? Now, again, so let's take a quick recap of what we did in terms of perception, right? So why is the idea of perception important? Now, because perception determines what kind of information will enter my brain in the first place. So what kind of information will I use for making a decision? Now, we saw that it's possible that there are many biases involved in terms of what information is perceived and processed, well, because our perception is imperfect. Now, this can be related to a perceptual idea, so that my mind plays tricks on me, that I don't see all the things that I should see. Now, but this can also be a motivational idea, right? So that I, only see or notice that information that I want to see, and everything that doesn't really fit into my picture of the world, I just ignore. And again, it's important to keep these things in mind if you want to understand how people make decisions.